Hello and welcome to the Age of Montessori Infant-Toddler workshop, webinar that we're going to offer today. I'm Nancy McNabb, and this is my friend, Leslie Kennedy. And Leslie and I are so happy to join you today and have you join us to talk about the prepared environment for infants and toddlers. So I am one of the instructors for Age of Montessori, and we are offering the Infant-Toddler certification course, as well as a number of webinars for your use and enjoyment. As you joined today, on the dashboard you saw there were 4 buttons, one to join, and the other ones will give you access to a certificate of attendance. If you would like to receive one, you press that button, and that will give you the information on how to get a certificate for attending today. There's also a link to go to our webinar library and information about how you can access just over 100 webinars for your information and professional development. And then also you'll see a QR code and a place to be able to donate. If you would like to donate towards our webinars to allow us to continue to offer them for free, please, we invite you to donate to the cause of Age of Montessori so that this information can go out to thousands of people around the globe. You'll also see a spot where it says, ask your questions here. And there you will be able to write any questions that you might have, and Leslie and I would be happy to answer them towards the end of the webinar today. So before we begin on our topic today, I'd like to just tell you a bit about myself. I am a mother of 4 adult children and the blessing of 9 grandchildren. I've also done Montessori at home and in school settings for almost 40 years. One of my very favorite topics to talk about is infants and toddlers. So I'm just delighted to be able to share my passion and my love for this age group with you. And Leslie, tell them a little bit about who you are.
So I am also a mother of 2 little ones. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old little girls at home. And I practice Montessori at home with them. And I also run Elevate Montessori in Livingston with my husband. We're both Montessori certified guides and practice Montessori at home and at school.
So we know that one of the keys in Montessori, there are so many key principles that Maria Montessori shared with us. And I hope that you have taken some time to look at our webinar library. And if you're new to Age of Montessori, please avail yourself of these many wonderful ways that you can learn more about Montessori. But today we are going to be talking about the prepared environment. And in her very famous book, The Absorbent Mind, Maria Montessori said, plainly, the environment must be a living one, prepared by intelligence and arranged by an adult who is prepared for his or her mission. And that's us. Here we are. Hopefully we are aware enough to prepare the environment for the children who we love, whether this is for you as a mom or a dad, as a Montessori guide, or somebody who's just learning about Montessori who wants to perhaps incorporate more Montessori principles into your home or into a daycare or wherever you might be. Or maybe you're a grandma and maybe wants to incorporate some principles into your life with your grandchildren. Whatever it might be, you can prepare an environment following some of these key principles. So this is a slide talking about the Montessori Triad. Triad meaning triangle. And you can see the 3 sides of the triangle are the child, who we'll be talking about, in this case, the infant and toddler. This workshop today is focusing on children under the age of 3, but many of these principles will be carried out for older children in the early childhood years and on into the elementary years. The other side of the triangle being the adult, and that's us, and how we can prepare ourselves for our mission. And then the base of this triangle being the environment, and how we can prepare the environment to meet the developmental needs of the children. All 3 parts of this triangle are equal, they are all vital, and they are very interrelated. One cannot survive and thrive without the other. They are very interdependent upon each other. Each of them have a task and a purpose, and they all work together for the greatest good of the child. Here you see a beautiful environment. This happens to be Elevate Montessori, Leslie's prepared environment that she and her husband have made. And you can see in it, the shelves are part of the environment. It is low shelves with beautiful material, very warm and inviting. All of the qualities in this slide we will be talking about a little more in detail as we go on today. You can see the children who are freely moving, interacting with the materials in the environment. Everything is child size and just ready for them. Beautiful and attractive and alive, calling out to them, come, use me, touch me, experience life, explore me through your hands and through your senses. These are the parts of the Montessori Triad.
The adult is an important part of the triangle as well, and as adults, it's important to come prepared to our classrooms or to our children in the morning. One way to do this, especially at this young age, is to be curious. Children under the age of 3, they become verbal at some point, but a lot of them are nonverbal. And so being curious, observing them, what are they interested in? What do they use? How do they use it? What are they drawn to? And through this, we become aware of the child. Through this awareness, we grow to trust the child. We are able to learn more about them. It's important as the adult to stay calm. Young children especially can sometimes get our blood pressure raised, and so it's important for us as the adults to take a deep breath and stay calm and be collected for our children. It helps them be calm when we are calm. And to also be humble. When we come each day curious and wondering about the child, then we're able to really grow and learn about them. And it's important to do that since we're the link between the child and the prepared environment. If we don't know about the child, then we can't truly prepare an environment for their success and their interest. It is necessary, first of all, for the teacher to become humble. He must try to arouse within himself this attitude of humility, which is, after all, an attitude of love towards the child. When we take this stance of humility, then we are able to really get curious, and through this curiosity is really how we grow to love the children. And that's so important as a Montessorian, as a parent, as anyone around children, to be able to grow that humility into love and fostering those relationships with the children.
And I think that is one of the key differences between Montessori and traditional educational approaches, daycares and other schools, where the teacher is more dominant, where the focus is on what I have to teach you, rather than you, this child, this genius who already has so much potential within, what they are being called to do, what they are led by their own inner voice, their own inner teacher. We're not up there to entertain and direct and to continually be in charge of or to dominate the environment. We are there in a very humble stance and in a mode of, I am here to learn, to observe, and to help you, to assist the life of this child, not to entertain them, not to do a big, fancy dance all the time, or to stand up in front and say, we're all going to do this now, but to follow the child and to see what are the child's needs that we learn when we can be quiet and we can be humble and we can also be in that state of just listening grace. So there are so many beautiful qualities within the child. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those children who we all just adore. We want them to thrive and blossom and become the fullness of their own potential. So we see the child, especially in the first 3 years. Montessori labeled the child in the state of the absorbent mind. If you have not yet heard that term, really ponder it. The child is in an unconscious absorbent mind in the first 3 years. And in that state, they are taking in, they are absorbing as a sponge would water. Anything and everything that they see, what they feel, what they hear, what they even sense in the environment, which is why it is so important to make it beautiful for us to be in that really state of preparedness for them, because they are taking in everything that we model, how we speak, how we handle ourselves, and how we even move in the environment. They're taking it all in, and then they will imitate it. Whatever we give is what they will become. So it really behooves us to move slowly, to move with grace, to leave our baggage at the door, to be our very best self every day when we are in the presence of the children. They will follow our lead. They will imitate us. So we want the child to be in their own state, which their normalized state is very loving, very joyful, and very genuine. And that is what we want them to be able to expand, to blossom, and to grow. We're not there to dictate to, do this and don't do that, or who we want them to become. We just are there to support them as they are becoming themselves. I'm sure you can think of so many other qualities that this child has, so many traits that are beautiful. In addition to loving and joyful, you can think of other traits that the children in your lives have. We know that every child has an inner teacher. That is their own inner guide, their own inner wisdom that is guiding them. And that is how they adapt to and take in their environment. It is through their absorbent mind, also through their movements and through their senses. That's why we want to give the child freedom to move, freedom to explore, to allow all their senses to hear and to see and to feel and to take in everything that's around them. And when they are free to do that, you'll see that they are able to concentrate. Look at this little one focusing on putting those little sticks into those little holes of that little jar. And that is something that only he can be led to do. It's not something that we teach them or tell them to do. And we know that when children experience that connection to their own inner teacher, they learn to rely on it. They listen to that voice. They become better and calmer and more joyful, more who they really are in their normalized state when they listen to the voice of their inner teacher. The child seeks for independence by means of work. And Marie Montessori called work anything that the child did with their hands when they're focusing and concentrating and using the material in the environment. She called that their work. That is what is growing them. That is what is helping them to become who they are. It is that through this work that it leads to the independence of their body and their mind. Little the child cares about the knowledge of others. He wants to acquire a knowledge of his own, to have experience of the world, and to perceive it by his own unaided efforts. The child doesn't want our help. They're the first one to say, no, my work, or no, because they want to be able to do it on their own. And that's what the joy of Montessori is, seeing them do things independently.
It's so true. Children fight back. If you're trying to help them with something that they can do themselves, they will scream or squeal or swat your hand. Whatever they do, they want to do that independence themselves. When my daughter was about, 7 or 8 months old, she was squirming on her belly to get across the floor. And we went outside in the summertime and had a sprinkler going. And of course, I set her as far away from the sprinkler as possible, but there was no way I was going to keep her away from that water. She wanted to experience the joy and the beauty that comes with summertime and comes with playing in the water. And she was able to experience it. She crawled over to it and hung out right there, right beside the sprinkler for probably 20 minutes with a big smile on her face the whole time.
And that's because you are a Montessori mom. Some moms would say, no, don't get wet. But Leslie just let her go. With that freedom and that opportunity to move, she experienced that joy of that sprinkler.
So now we're going to kind of dive into the heart of the prepared environment, which involves a lot of aspects. Children have a lot of needs. They need to be fed when they're hungry. They need to use the bathroom or change a diaper when that's necessary. They need to manipulate materials. They need to have their things ready where they can access them. So we'll kind of go in and talk about those different things. And through the prepared environment is really keeping in mind how we learn about our children and how we are able to let them be successful. And so I have a picture of an environment that looks very messy. It looks rather chaotic, but it was very prepared. We did flour sifting, and I warned my assistant in advance it was going to be very messy. So both adults were prepared for this mess, and there were cleaning supplies for the children. And then the child children came in and joyfully made that mess and also joyfully cleaned it and helped us clean it when we got our big adult brooms out. They were so excited to be part of that and to help us clean up that mess.
That is really one of the keys. The prepared environment does not need to be pristine, spotless, and perfect.
It's not.
It needs to be meeting the needs of the children, whatever those happen to be at the time. But as Leslie said, we do want to promote independence in helping them to clean up their environment. And if they are having snack, you see this lovely snack area in a Montessori school that I visited, and it was just very nicely set up for them. Everything is low and these beautiful little shelves, and you can see the chairs and the table just made for their size, spaces for them to put their trash and to wash their hands and to be able to access their plates and their cups independently. And then also we want to make sure that they have the tools that they can use. The previous slide showed us some of their tools. Where'd the tools go? Maybe the next slide. I don't know. Eventually, there were some tools, and those were little brooms and dustpans and mops and things that the children can clean up the environment by themselves.
And you can also allow your child at home to have a prepared environment for food. This is a picture of my pantry on the slide that is the lowest two shelves in the pantry are dedicated to my children, so cups their sizes, small bowls, small plates. There's a little box there that has their silverware, and some snacks on the bottom shelf, so that way when they feel hungry, they can go and get that food themselves, be independent. And this is my daughter in her high chair that we use that was just pulled up to the table, so she was part of the family. This was obviously not an eating experience, but a cleaning up experience after making banana bread. But it does show her high chair, which she was able to climb into, and she knew how to ask to get out of. She never felt confident climbing out herself. But she was able to independently come to the table and join us, or when she was hungry by herself.
So whatever your home looks like, you can make it Montessori-like by just giving them the tools that they need to be able to access things by themselves, use them, clean up, put them away, know how to get in and out of their chairs. All of those are Montessori principles. We know what they need by observing, stepping back, seeing, oh, they need to have a little more freedom here, or, oh, they need a little more structure. How can I support them? How can I be an aid to life and not interfere with their growth?
Another area where they can be very independent is in sleeping. Especially at home, Montessori believed floor beds were appropriate from the beginning. So that way a child, when they're tired, can go into bed themselves. The picture on the bottom is my daughter, very young. The rug was actually supposed to be beside her bed as a soft place to land when she slithered out after her nap. But she decided she was cold that day and used it as a blanket. And you can also see the rest of her room. There wasn't that much in it, so that way it was safe for her when she did wake up. If you are in a school, please be aware of safety guidelines and use a crib as necessary, and be conscious of all of that. But allowing the children to let us tell us when they're tired, and respecting that for the child, letting them sleep when they're tired.
Another very important area, of course, when you have infants and toddlers, is a place for them to be able to have their diaper changed or learn to use the toilet independently. The changing area needs to have a nice space for storage. You can see this beautiful bathroom that was in an infant-toddler classroom that I observed. Everything is well organized, a place for everything. And in this case, the children were able to crawl up on the diaper table by themselves, again, aiding in their independence. And another low diaper changing area. Many Montessori schools do diaper standing up. Some will have the children lay on a low table where they can climb up independently.
At my school, we do standing diapering, and so when a child is able to stand up, pull themselves up successfully, and stand with some stability, then we use standing diapering. So this is our changing area in our infant classroom. You can see the area for immobile babies that aren't able to do that yet. But then the mirror on the right-hand side with the bar is where they stand. And we give them a mirror so that way they become familiar with their body. They can see what's going on. Many of them put wet diapers into the trash can themselves and then go over and wash their hands. This prepares them for toileting and being successful and independent, aware of what's going on with their bodies.
Diapering is a very important part of work with infants and toddlers, and so you do want to make it a very pleasant experience for them and for you. You want to make sure that you're comfortable, that children are safe, and of course able to be cleaned properly, but you want it to be in the Montessori way so that you're talking with them, you're interacting with them, you're making use of every moment of that diapering experience. So all classrooms, again, whether you're in a home setting, a daycare, a Montessori community, in your own home, you want to incorporate some gross motor activity. Children are always on the move. In this age, Montessori said, movement is the law of their being. They are moving, moving, moving. So in the classroom, it's nice if you have a place that you can incorporate right into your indoor space. And it's also ideal if you have a separate room for gross motor play and activities. This I love because it's right in the middle of their classroom. You can see their low shelves and all of their fine motor activities, their lessons, and their things that they do with their hands. But then these babies also need to move their whole bodies. So they have a nice little climber with stairs and going up and going down, and you can see how busy it is and how these children need to be climbing. So the caregiver, the Montessori guide, is there perched, ready and waiting, making sure the children are safe and that they have that freedom of movement when they need to move.
And if you don't have a space in your classroom, if it's too small, or if you just have an extra space in your school, a great thing to do is to create a gross motor area in its own room. My toddler classroom is pretty small, and so this room is right next door. If half of the class really needs to move and half of the class wants to work with fine motor materials, then we have this available so that way we're able to keep an eye in both places. I have two teachers, so one would go to one area, one would go to the other. And that way toddlers need to move a lot too. They have a lot of big muscles that they're growing and learning themselves. So it gives them that space to be able to use those big muscles.
And I just love this. The children have an opportunity to climb up, to slide down, to hide under the little climber, to walk on a balance beam, to rock back and forth on that little boat. And what is that other material?
That, we call it a donkey. I think it's a horse. It's sort of a bouncer. They sit on the end behind the donkey's head and hold on, and it bounces. My daughter literally goes about 6 inches in the air when she's on it and bouncing up and down with the biggest smile on her face every time.
And again, we're in Montana, so you have to have an indoor play space.
Yes.
Because the children, there are just some months of the year that it's hard to get outside. We try to get outside almost every day. Every classroom or home setting needs a calming area. It could be a little library area. You can see these beautiful low bookshelves that they make where the books can face out so the children can see the cover of the book, where it will be appealing and attractive to them and draw them to it. And a nice cozy chair, something that they can just curl up in when they want to have a quiet moment to look at books or to just have some time by themselves. Sometimes toddlers have some big feelings and they just need to go to a calming space to be able to sit by themselves for a few minutes and gather their emotions. This area can be as simple as some soft pillows in the corner of a room and a small basket of books, anything, a little quiet place where the children can enjoy that moment of solitude.
Yeah, and I really like this one with the soft pillows, just being on the floor. If a child is feeling really big emotions, sometimes they need a safe place to go to feel those emotions. And so giving them that soft sort of space is really helpful for toddlers especially. And in the Montessori environment, everything has a place and everything is in its place. This includes the things that help them get to and from school, such as coats, shoes, clothes. And so this is some cubbies from a classroom where it's low enough the children are able to hang their coats on the cubbies. I love the pictures so that way they're able to see themselves. There's no question about which one is Richard's cubby and which one is Sydney's cubby. And so the children are able to be successfully and get themselves their things that they need You can also do this in your home very easily. This is a picture of my entryway in my home. And so, of course, being in Montana, we have a huge basket for hats and mittens that sometimes they want what's on the bottom, so they dump everything out and put back in everything else. There are low hooks for their coats, their backpack, their helmet, whatever they need. A low mirror to check themselves out before they leave, make sure they look okay. And then it's right by our hooks, so that way we can model putting things away. And not in the picture is we have a sunroom where we keep a big old shelf that has shoes, so that way they can be successful on their way out the door of making sure they have everything they need, or on their way in, they know where to put everything at the end of the day.
There they are, the child-sized tools. So in the whole classroom or home environment needs cleaning at some point or another. So wherever you have your tools, have them accessible and available to the children so that they can sweep the floor and clean up their own spills and prepare the space for their other people in their classroom or their next friends that might be coming for a snack.
So these were all things inside, but it's so important to go outside. Even though we're in Montana, we try to go outside every day, snow, wind, rain. And so giving them spaces and the time to go outside. You can see here we take even the littlest infants outside. This one, actually, the one on the top left, she slept better outside. Not that we tried to encourage it, it just sort of happened. But things that are interesting for the children, giving them stumps to climb on, a wheelbarrow to push big heavy things in, wanting to use those big muscles again. We had a teacher who anytime it snowed, she would walk a spiral in the snow, and the children loved following in her footprints each time. So it can be really simple, or it can be more complex. It's up to what you have in your outside environment.
Maria Montessori said to go outside every day.
Yes.
That's one of the places the children really learn the most, just by experiencing nature.
Go for a walk. Toddlers want to walk, and if you let them walk at their own pace, you will be amazed at how far they can walk. We went for a walk today. We have a little girl who just started walking in my classroom, but she walked about 8 blocks with us with the biggest smile the whole time. We stopped and looked at every bug, flower, rock, everything along the way, and it was so joyful for all of the children to be outside on a delightfully sunny spring day today. And then also go into a garden. So if you have the space, go ahead and plant some stuff outside. If you don't have the space, get some containers. So the school actually started in my home. So we had a big garden outside. The children would help me water them. They would help me weed. They would help me pick the plants. The produce, when it was ready, they would help me clean it and prepare it for our lunch. So it really gives them the tools for healthy meals, healthy foods, setting them up for success. And take them out for outings. Don't be afraid to go places with toddlers. We went to Rocky Creek Farm in the fall where we saw sheep. We went on a hay ride. We saw chickens. We had a picnic outside. We go to the fire station. We're getting ready to plan a field trip to the museum. Children want to be together as a group, so don't be afraid to take them out on outings either.
So we talked a little bit about some of the elements of the prepared environment. We know that the child is multifaceted and has so many needs in all areas of their being. We want to provide a holistic education for children. We want to make sure that we're thinking about it and planning and preparing to meet their needs at the physical level. That's why, of course, we want to make sure that we can feed them and they can be changed and dressed and all of the things for their physical needs, as well as their emotional needs. Are they feeling safe? Is it a secure place where they can be themselves and express their own feelings? We want to make it an intellectually or cognitively rich environment where learning takes place, where their memory is happening, and where they have an opportunity to use the materials in the environment to learn from the material. the environment also has many things that will lead to their social development. The Montessori community at large is a very social experience, even for little ones who are just learning to interact with one another. And it's also a spiritual environment that we know that children have their own spiritual nature, and their spirituality will come out in a beautiful, peaceful place. And so we want to provide for the holistic nature of the children when we prepare an environment. This, maybe go back to that slide. This is a beautiful slide that I had permission from Christy Stanford to show. She has a beautiful Facebook page that, Instagram that you could choose to follow, infant_toddler_Montessori. Some beautiful pictures of her own environments and children doing the Montessori lessons that you might enjoy seeing. So again, we're going to now talk about some of the elements of the prepared environment.
So one of the big things is that they're child-sized. These are children that we're working with, and we want them to be able to reach the things that the children want to use. So Elevate Montessori actually started in our home. So this is my living room and my dog sitting on the couch. And so some of these aspects, even once the school moved out of our home, we kept, like the calm area with the books and the rug. We kept one of the shelves so that way our children had access to different toys even in our living room. And having it be developmentally appropriate. I had multiple different ages. My daughter was 4 months old when we started this. So she had a little area where she had toys that she could tug on. And then I also had a 15-month-old. So there were smaller things that were on higher shelves that the 15-month-old could manipulate and take to safe areas. So it was definitely for different ages and keeping it developmentally appropriate for the different ages that were in this environment.
One of the key principles of Montessori is to make everything very simple. Yes, we want to make sure it's rich, but not overstimulating, not so cluttered. We don't want the environment to be so full that the child cannot feel and breathe and hear and become. So we want to make it very simple, yet complete. We want to make sure that we are meeting their developmental needs in all areas, but we also want to make sure that each lesson in itself is complete. So if you have a puzzle and a piece of it is missing, or something is broken, or it's just not working for the child, then we recommend just remove that. Make everything on the shelf have a purpose and be simple but complete within itself.
And you want everything to be really warm and natural. The more things that you're adding into an environment, the more complicated it gets, the more colorful it gets, then the child may not know exactly where to look, what to do. It can feel overwhelming. If you feel overwhelmed, that's a good sign that your child is feeling overwhelmed. And so keeping things really natural, keeping warm, neutral colors is really helpful for a child who's absorbing all aspects of their environment to being able to just take in the part that they need to take in at that time, whether or not it's tugging on a ring or putting rings on a post. Whatever your child is working on, the more simple, the more natural, the easier they are going to have to be able to focus on that material and actually learn and get things out of it that they need. So this is a picture of a little girl in our infant classroom. We have really good sunlight in our infant room, and so we often take advantage of it by letting the light shine through different things. And Maria said the environment must be rich in motives, which lend interest to activity and invite the child to conduct his own experiences. So just that simple thing of a light shining through colors, this child is so focused and so engaged because the environment is rich, but yet simple, so that way it's developmentally appropriate for her.
Continuing on, talking about elements of the prepared environment, make sure that if you are in a school setting or thinking about starting a school in your home, that you consult with the local licensor to make sure that you meet all safety regulations. Everything needs to be looked at. How many doors you have, the width of the doors, how many indoor, outdoor access points there are. If there are windows, have low windows so that the children can look out them. Above and beyond anything we do is the safety of the children. So make sure the environment is safe and child-proof. Make sure you have your sockets covered so the children cannot hurt themselves in an electric socket. Make sure that the environment is going to meet all of their safety and health needs for a regulation standpoint.
And so the infant and the toddler environments do look a little bit different. So an infant environment needs a lot of space so that way the children can move. They're just learning how to move, so they need that space to be able to move themselves. We kind of talked about all of the different areas of eating, sleeping, toileting, going outside, movement, and calm areas. So this is a big picture of my infant classroom, also known as El Nido or the nest. It's a place for them to feel warm and cozy, where they're able to do diapering, where they're able to be calm, where they're able to eat. So having all of those elements in an infant environment that is small and appropriate for them is very important for the infant's success. And then toddlers have a different sort of a need. They are up, they're walking, they're using their hands, and using those hands, they're able to carry things to a table. They're able to walk and run and jump, and they need to do all of these things. And so ideally, an infant and a toddler environment is separated. I mentioned the school started in my home, and we moved out just about the time that my daughter started pulling herself up to the shelves. And I was so thankful that it coincided in time, because I started to be like, oh no, how do I keep my infant safe along with these two toddlers now that she's able to pull up and reach everywhere in the environment? And so having those two separate places, especially in a school environment, is very important for everyone's safety and success. And in prepared environment should be rich, but not overwhelming. They're using all of their senses all of the time. So if it's really loud, or if there's a lot of colors going on, it can feel too overwhelming for the child. So keeping things very subtle and warm, natural, all of those elements that we talked about keep the children successful. And then the toddler environment. The toddlers are moving, running, jumping, going everywhere. And so having an environment just for them, we've seen this picture, but you can see that there are two children that are eating. There are in the left corner cots tucked in for sleeping, and right beside that is a bed for when children have those really big emotions. They have a safe place to feel them. There's a little bathroom there. They go outside. They can do movement in the room next door. So it's important to have all of those elements in the toddler environment as well.
This is an example of a prepared toddler community in a fairly large school. So they had quite a few children. You can see lots of children have tables and chairs available to them. The principle being that they go to the shelf, choose their work, and then bring it to a table or the floor, work on that maybe the big oval rug or just a floor mat or smaller rug to be able to do their lessons on the floor. But wherever it is, make sure it is beautiful, clean, and uncluttered. Of course, when the children are in the room, it's going to look a lot busier. What I love to think about the Montessori environment is kind of like the beehive. There's the happy hum in the room. They're kind of moving around and buzzing like the little bees, but it's very productive work. It has a purpose, and the children, it's not loud, and you don't hear children screaming or crying, but well, occasionally you hear them crying. Sometimes you hear them screaming. But the hope or the goal is that they are in that state of, the hum of their talking and their interacting and their joyful noise of experiencing their environment and each other. That creates this beautiful noise level in the room.
So the goal is to promote exploration, to allow a toddler or an infant to explore. All they're wanting to do is explore, see the different things, how can they use it, and to have independence, to be able to access the things that they need access to and want access to. Toddlers, especially a child right around 2 years of old, their sense of order is really strong. And so it's important for these 2-year-olds to have things in the same place every day. It's how they get their sense of calm. And if we're modeling putting things away, they're going to be putting things in the same place too. To have movement, they need to move those bodies. And then freedom of choice, by giving children the access to use whatever in this environment that they want to. That's how we learn about what they're into, how they're using it, what sort of grip are they using with their hand. We don't know unless we give them that freedom of choice, and that's how we're able to learn from the children, is giving them that. And that's how they're able to learn themselves, to learn to listen to that inner voice that we talked about, to be able to do the different things that they feel called to do.
The environment usually has an area we would call the fine motor lesson work. Some people, and Leslie being one of them, they intermix the materials in the different areas. And some really isolate, like this one would be specifically, you can see there are shapes with different colors, and the circle, they're self-correcting material, so the circle only fits into the circle frame, and the square fits into the square, and the triangle into the triangle. And you can see the different size circles. These are all for sensory exploration with the use of the hand. And using that fine motor grip, the pincer grip, is helping the child to develop the hand in preparation later for writing. Many of the materials for this age group are used specifically for developing the hand.
So Nancy mentioned that I don't isolate things. Things are all kind of mixed together, but they're still simple. They're still on the shelves for the children to be able to experience different things. So this is an infant picture where they have 3 lessons on each shelf. They're able to access just what they need. And the next slide shows a toddler shelf where you can see a mix of fine motor things like opening and closing jars. There are some clothespins in a bowl. And then there's also language materials right next door, a book of birds with bird figurines to match. The trucks have colored horses that are supposed to be in that bowl but not in the picture, so that way they can match colors. So it's just kind of a mix of whatever the children are working on in the classroom to allow them to be most successful.
One of the areas that we like to include are the practical life lessons. These are areas where the children can learn to care for themselves. So you can see some dressing frames. This would give them opportunities to practice how to open and close Velcro, how to open and close buttons, or to use a zipper. These are the frames that we call the dressing frames. You also see some materials that are for the care of the environment, how we wipe up spills. There's a little duster for how we can dust the shelves, how we can pour water, how we practice using bowls and carrying bowls on trays. Some of the materials, even with toddlers, are glass or a heavy, a ceramic or some type of pottery or china, but we make sure that they are thick and hopefully non-breakable, because children do sometimes break things or drop things. And if they do break them or drop them, then we help them learn to clean them up, or if it's glass, of course, we would help and clean it up for them and teach them how to be careful doing so. But the goal here is for children to learn real tools doing real work in a real setting, because that's what life is all about. It's not just, a fake thing that we learn at school. We are preparing children for life, not just for the next age or the next grade, but for their life skills that we call practical life.
So food preparation is a really big practical life skill. This is a great one to do at home. You can have your children involved pretty early. I had Vivian peeling garlic very early. I would kind of smash it a little bit so she could do it. You can also do it in the classroom. So on the left, we were doing cantaloupe cutting. They also, and if there's a child who wants to do a snack, there's a chair right next door, so that way they learn how to wait. There are lots of tools online that you can get. I love the little knife that girl is holding. It's plastic. It's totally safe. I have tried to cut myself with it unsuccessfully, but it cuts fruits and vegetables really easily. So taking a look around, and you can find all sorts of things that are appropriate for the child to use. And they can also dress and undress. Many of you have probably seen the Montessori coat flip. If you haven't, there are lots of YouTube videos. This is my daughter putting on her coat. Well, it was actually a sweater, but she was trying to do the coat flip. And you can see she sort of has it on. She just has it on upside down. But giving her that time and that space and the resources to try these things at home has allowed her to be very successful in dressing. Mornings are delightful now where I can say, go get your clothes, I'll make breakfast, and I turn around and she's dressed sitting at the table waiting for me. So giving them that time and space, they do learn how to do it, and they will amaze you once you give them that chance.
And giving them that time takes a little longer when you're trying to get out the door in the
Yes.
morning, or if you're moving a whole classroom outside for recess or outdoor play. It takes a little longer to give them the time, but if you do it, it'll pay off later because they will be very independent and know how to do it themselves. Plus, you don't want to rush in and interfere. When they are doing their work, you step back. If you have to, put your hands behind your back and let them do it themselves. This is an example of a sensorial shelf, another one that would be used for the refinement of the senses. You can see again the little knobbed cylinders where they pick them up with their pincer grip and put them into certain sized holes. This is actually to refine the visual sense. They can also feel it with their hands. Lots of different puzzles and shapes and materials that they explore with their hands to refine their senses.
They can also just have sensorial experiences in life. One thing that we really love doing with infants is getting out paint. If you are worried about them putting paint in their mouth, usually it tastes bad. They only do it once or twice. Or you can take, if your child is eating yogurt, or if they're not even that far yet, you can do rice cereal, put a little food coloring or veggie juice in it so that way it's colored. Let them paint that way. Putting flour on the table, they can definitely eat flour. The middle picture is my daughter with some cooked colored noodles that she spent a long time playing with on a very tired afternoon when she skipped a nap. So giving them those sensorial experiences, the children learn how to play with them. They learn how to feel, touch, smell, taste, and that's so important in letting them learn the different things that are happening around all of us every day.
You can see that all of these are such pleasurable sensorial experiences that if the mom or the teacher or caregiver said no anytime they started to explore with those things, that would just rob them of these very rich opportunities. So we really want to just make the world available to them in a very safe way, in a way that they're going to be able to explore, and be safe above all, but also to just have a really beautiful experience with it. We want to include some language materials. We know that this is one of the key times for the development of language in the first 3 years. So we are always making sure that when we speak to them, they can see our mouths. We are exaggerating our speech. We're talking slowly and clearly so that they can absorb the way that we speak our language. That's how they learn our language. So we want to also have just good speech on a day-to-day basis as we're talking with them. We're narrating, we're reading them stories, we're talking clearly, but we also can have a lesson that is a vocabulary lesson where we give them picture cards, we give them baskets of animals, or we give them opportunities to do pretend play, in this case with a cash register, where they learn to, interact with their friends using animals or tools, or in this case, going to a store and selling or something, or experiencing what that would feel like in pretend play. But all of the point of this is language development. We have lots of opportunities for language development in an infant and toddler classroom.
So the materials themselves must be safe, in good condition, and non-toxic. We want to make sure that what we're giving the children sets them up for success. And of course, good condition. Nancy mentioned if something's broken, throw it out. It doesn't need to be in a child's environment. Instead, find things that they can be successful with. And we want them to be complete. So that missing puzzle piece, the whole puzzle's got to go. You're not going to find that other piece anywhere else. And keep it really simple. So in this picture, these are pictures of dogs and dogs that match the pictures themselves. So you can see that this little girl has matched a couple of them, the German Shepherd, Dalmatian, the Golden Retriever, and say she was trying to match the Corgi, but there was no Corgi dog. Well, then she's going to be upset when she gets to that last picture and there's no matching dog. And then keeping it really simple, that's all that was in the basket was pictures of dogs and the dogs themselves, so the children knew how to use them without interaction from me. And then natural materials are best. So wood, cotton, wool, ceramic materials, metals. I do put a fair amount of glass in my toddler classroom. If it breaks, well, then we learn how to clean it up. This minimizes the use of plastic and cheap materials that break. Oftentimes plastic isn't necessarily the safest. It's not necessarily good for our earth either. Thick glass bowls really help children. If they drop, they oftentimes survive. I'm amazed by how much glass survives being dropped. And then it actually teaches the children how to handle these fragile materials. And if something does break, I broke a bowl the other day and a child turned to me and said, "It's okay, things break." And so they learn that it's okay that things break, and they learn how to clean up and how to be compassionate towards those around them when that does happen.
We talked about this. The material needs to be proportionately sized to their hands and their strength. This is a wonderful little experience. This child has his hands in a sensory bin. It looks like it's beans. And he's finding these little objects. They happen to be little animals. Could you imagine the joy this child is experiencing when they can put their hands in and feel the beans and hear them moving around and they're crunching them with their hands? And then they find a rhinoceros or a cougar, a lion. It's just such a fun sensorial experience. We want to make sure that the materials are realistic. So you're not going to see any purple dogs or flying cows. You're going to see real animals in a small-sized toy animal that looks like the real animal, so that it is realistic and true to life. These books that have pictures of animals that wear clothing and do funny things, they're just not realistic of what children see. You just don't see purple dogs.
No, you don't.
The self-correcting materials. This means that certain things only fit in certain holes, or certain rings go on first before you can put the next one, or certain bowls only fit inside other bowls. So you want to make sure that this is how children are learning, by doing, not by us telling them, no, that doesn't go in there. We don't correct children. We let the material guide them, and we teach by showing and teaching, not by correcting. So when we can keep from correcting the child by just letting the material do its work, that's how the child will grow, not by us being in charge of them. Again, we talked about making sure that they meet the developmental needs. In this case, putting things on things or posting, very important, rings on a post, little balls in a hole. This is a very a sensitive period the children are in of transferring one object into another place. And so we give them lots of materials where they can do this. And we move from the concrete to the abstract. So we have the real picture or the real animal, and then we take it to the picture of the animal. And the best way to bring this material to life is to follow the child's interests. We know children love animals, so that's why we have many animal-related lessons in the classroom. They love food, so we have food-related material. They love artistic, creative material, so we have that in the classroom. If a child is very obsessed with something such as vehicles. Right now we have little boys that all they want to talk about is cars, trucks, vehicles. So you have those in the classroom. The same would be an example, maybe dinosaurs, something that the children are really interested in. You bring pictures and books into the classroom so that they can learn about and follow their own interests.
Yes, baby shark is very popular in my classroom right now, and honestly, not one of my favorites. But I'm trying to support what their interest is. So I have a matching sharks lesson in my classroom right now that we got at the aquarium. So there are like 8 different types of sharks, I think, and they are able to match them. And the children sing the song with it. But I do see that the different animals are actually being matched, like the tiger sharks together. So following that interest. So that's choosing with intention. We want to really think about what we're putting in the classroom. What is the function of it? Does it teach something, or does it give it joy? Then it has a purpose in the classroom. I love the thought that just giving a child joy is in and of itself purpose enough to have in your environment. So actually this ball that this baby has her feet on is... I don't know if something is wrong with it. I found it at a thrift store, but you can squeeze it and it squeaks. It is only allowed in the infant classroom. And so they start pushing it with their feet, making it squeak. And as they get older and more control of their body, you will actually find infants like laying their whole body on this ball and then laughing in delight as the air comes back into it, making a squeaking noise. And so part of that too is looking for the correct level of difficulty, not being too easy or too difficult or too boring. We want to make sure what we're giving the child is actually meeting some sort of developmental need. And children want to use things that are allowing them to learn. Children want to learn, and so giving them those things that are appropriate for their level is so important in the child actually wanting to use that material and following through with that success. And it doesn't have to be expensive things. I do a lot of thrift store shopping. I am lucky enough to work with a gal who does a lot of DIY materials. So get crafty, get creative. The puzzles on the left are typical Montessori materials that you see, and I've had them in my classroom. And I've also had, this is a little tin can and a jar with the lids, and they use the tin can and the jar more in my experience. And so you can just get creative, use things around your house, use Tupperware containers. And then the other thing that's on the wall is a piece of cardboard with literally 2 holes in it, a string through the holes, and napkin rings tied onto the string. And this little boy pulled them back and forth for a long time the other day, and he knew he had to sit down to get it all the way down to the ground. He had to stand up. It took a lot of gross motor movement to be able to do that as well. So just get creative. Pinterest is great. And we want to foster independence. So we want to allow the children to do all of this themselves. So choose things that the child can do mostly independently or with minimal help. Flower arranging. If they're younger and into it, go ahead and cut the flowers to the length that they need. If they're able to use scissors, let them cut the flowers. Give them things that are small for their hands. Think about how the children are using these materials and let it be successful for them.
You can see all that goes into teaching a child or modeling for a child how to use a funnel. Putting the funnel into the hole of the vase. You have the little pitcher of water. You have to pour the water. You can see she takes a lot of control. So she's using her fine motor control and, some physical movement as well. And the concentration, the focus that she has to have to be able to get that water into the funnel, into the vase, then to choose the flower that she wants and put it in there. These are practical life skills that she is using. Then she will take that beautiful arranged vase with flowers in it and carry it somewhere to beautify the environment. It's just such a lovely lesson. It's even better if you went out on a walk and found the flowers and cut the flowers and brought them home to put in your vase. It's all part of the whole experience of realistic experiences of her choosing the flower, doing the work by herself, probably going to clean it up by herself, and then take it to somebody to enjoy. It's practical life in action. So there you go. We talked about the 3 sides of the Montessori Triad. And so we talked about the child, the adult, and the environment. The goal being that that child becomes the normalized child, who is peaceful, who is joyful, who loves to work, who loves to be with people. That is the child in their normalized, natural state. And we talked about the adult becoming aware, becoming the observer, the humble servant of the child, learning what their needs are and how can I best meet their needs by serving them in a humble state. And of course, today we spent the bulk of our time together talking about how to prepare the environment for infants and toddlers. Just such a key topic. Again, the child will grow, work, and blossom by how we link them to the environment that we create and maintain for them.
And we've talked about how the child is absorbing and soaking everything in like a sponge. And they have a different, and Maria Montessori says, the child has a different relation to his environment from ours. The child absorbs it. The things he sees are not just remembered, they form part of his soul. He incarnates in himself all in the world about him that his eyes see and his ears hear. The child is transformed by them. So keeping in mind that what we put into our environments, the child is actually transformed. That's how they grow. And we want them to grow into that joyful, loving child. And so giving them those resources to feel those things, to grow into that, that's our job as the prepared, aware, conscientious adult.
It certainly is a joy,
It
it certainly is a mission. And we love being with the children. We just love being with you all too and sharing our passion for Montessori. We want to thank you again for joining us today. If there are any questions in the chat, and if you haven't yet had a chance to write any, we will take a few moments as we're wrapping up today. If you have any burning questions, please go ahead and send them to us in the chat room. And if you are watching a replay of this and would like to ask a question, please feel free to contact me, Nancy McNabb, or Leslie Kennedy through Age of Montessori through our website. We also want to tell you about another webinar that is coming up in just a few weeks, offered by Mary Ellen Mons, the program director and founder of Age of Montessori, and one of our friends here in Bozeman who also runs the school, Mayella Koster, entitled Sensitive Children with Learning Difficulties. This is such an important topic. We know a lot of you will be interested, and we hope that you'll join us by registering for this webinar, which is being offered on May the 11th at 4 o'clock. We, again, invite you to look at the webinar library and see if there isn't something there that you would be like to use as a resource for yourself or in your school for professional development. And if there's any other way that we can help you at Age of Montessori, please reach out to us through our website. As you know, we have certification programs. This year, we have just prepared and offered our first infant-toddler certification. We're in the middle of our second group right now and launching our first residency this summer. Leslie and I will be offering that together in June, and we're just so delighted to offer all of this information to those of you who love and work with infants and toddlers in your homes and communities. Thank you for joining us today, and take good care of those little ones.
And I do see that there's a question about how would you address a toddler with difficulty with speech and communication in the classroom. I think one of the best ways to do this is just consistency. So if they're having trouble with something, being consistent about how we use our words, and maybe even kind of getting a little creative, giving them cards with different feelings or emotions if that's specifically where they're struggling. I often find children who are having trouble with speech, it's those big emotions start to happen. That's really when we begin to feel flustered. They feel flustered. And so giving them resources for, oh, you're feeling mad or you're feeling sad. We have one child who we have been working with for almost a year. And in the last month or so, we found a book that was about different colors. So when you're feeling angry, you're feeling red. And he was angry today on the playground. And after a minute, I was like, wait, are you feeling red? And he was like, yes. And so just experimenting, doing what different things you can do for the different children to be able to give them those resources for different language.
I would agree. Just really modeling good speech, slowing down and making sure you are narrating and repeating back whatever the child might be saying, but you're going to say it again more clearly. If he said, I go now, yes, you are going to go now. So you would repeat back. If you really do find that by the age of 3, some children are not speaking or having very, very limited speech, or having a very difficult time articulating the sounds, you might want to make a referral for a speech evaluation, which usually by age 3 they do start to look at. But I think the more that you can model good speech, that's the best way to help speech develop in the classroom or at home. Another question about diapering standing up. Would you like to answer that, Leslie?
Sure. The question is about how to get them into the best position for cleaning if we're doing a standing diaper change. So in the toddler classroom in my room, I don't have any way to lay them down. I usually have them lift up a leg so that way I can reach better in the different crevices where things seem to hide. I have also seen where teachers have asked the child to bend over and touch their toes, and then you're getting basically the same view that you have as a child laying down. One thing that I really like, if a child is wearing a onesie, to actually snap it over their shoulder so that way their clothing isn't in the way. Or if they're wearing a t-shirt or a dress that's kind of long, I will tuck it in. I always say spring break style. I don't have a better description, where you tuck it in like the front, but I do it in their back. So that way their shirt is out of their way. And so that way you're not dealing with clothing, you're just dealing with the child's body. And oftentimes if you ask them to lift their leg, and now the children who I work with are so used to it, if they have a BM, they just kind of naturally start to lift their leg up as you clean them because they want to be clean as well.
You get better at it as you practice. If you have
Yes.
never done stand-up diapering, at first you might think, well, that doesn't work. How could I possibly do that? But it actually does work, and you get better at it, and the children also adjust to knowing how they can be most helpful so that it is a sanitary experience for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any other questions? And if not, we're going to wrap up. We want to thank you again for joining us, and please reach out to us at Age of Montessori if there is any other way that we can help you with the children in your lives.
Thank you.